Hello all you aviation fans. Make sure you hang around until the end for a bonus video where Dag makes a threaded stud.
Hey folks, if you're new to my channel, welcome, and if you're a longtime follower, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to be talking about my ultralight that I'm building, that I'm going to fly in. But if you're new to my channel, my nickname is Dag, D-A-G, and I'm obsessed with aviation. And for the last 10 or 15 years, I've been building what I call ginormous scale radio control electric aircraft. And if it doesn't have more than a 150-inch wing, it just doesn't get my design juices going. But I did get some hate mail saying that, you know, Dag, I know you fly ARFs. I do. I love, look everybody, I love every type of RC airplane. But if I'm going to design it from scratch and build it and spend $4 or $5 grand on it, it's going to be at least 150 inches or bigger. But I do have some ARFs. My favorite ARF right now is a Cessna 170 by Flex, the greatest flying airplane out of the box I've ever owned. So I'm just obsessed with aviation. But a couple of years ago, some friends said, why don't you build a real airplane? And I am a pilot from a long time ago. I just don't have any current medical or any of that because full-scale aviation got too expensive. So I said, you know, why not build an ultralight? I'm building airplanes almost as big as an ultralight. So this video is about making a stud that I need. Sometimes when you're designing, hang on a minute. Sometimes when you're designing something, it's going to have a closed-in quarters that you can't get to stuff very good. So imagine you got two ribs really close together, but I need a block of wood here, and then there's going to be a bolt that goes through it. Well, because of this rib, you can't get the bolt in there. So if you make a stud, you can just slide it in there, put a nut in there, torque the nut down, and then you've got a stud sticking out here that you can run a bolt on the outside. And that's what I need to do for the ailerons on my airplane. So the top is the AN bolt I started with. The bottom is the stud that I cut the threads on. To do this, you're going to need a tap and die set. And this is my Craftsman one I've had for quite a few years. These are still available on Amazon, though. A friend of mine just bought one and said, you know, this is the best tap and die set he bought. But before I get too far into this, I want to do a shout out to my sponsor, RTL Fasteners. If you need bolts, nuts, blind nuts, lock nuts, servo screws, I mean, just about anything you can imagine as a fastener, not just for model aviation, for any hobbyist that needs a fastener, go to rtlfasteners.com, use code DAG25, and if you buy more than $25 in product, you'll get 25% off your order. It's a really slick deal. So my air bike looks like this. This is a ultralight that's going to have a 340 well, it's got a 340cc Kawasaki engine in it, belt drive with a warp drive propeller, and it is just bodacious. I mean, it is just kick-ass. But the thing I'm talking about today is the wing. And on the wings, you cut out the ailerons. And the ailerons have bushings on the end, and basically the hinge and bushings going in the end, and then there's one in the middle of the aileron. So I needed to make these studs. So if you aren't familiar with what the AN bolts are, you can go to Aircraft Specialty and you buy what's called the grip length. The grip length is how long the shaft is. And then you have the thread on the end. So I had to pick the bolt that had the correct grip length plus the thread length for my stud I'm making. And here are the four that I chose. These are the winners. Then I decapitated them. You cut the heads off them. I put it in my Grizzly lathe, and I squared up the end and put a slight taper. I have found out if I got a slight taper, it's easier for me to start that die on there cutting the threads. This is my 1/4-28 die that I'm going to use to cut the threads. You're going to need a good vise that's going to hold this really strong, okay? And like it said at the beginning of this video, there's going to be a video at the end of me actually cutting the threads on one. And there's some techniques that you need to learn. You just can't start turning this. I've learned that once I feel it start to cut, well, first of all, getting it started, you got to really have your patience and just rock it forward and backwards, because basically there's little teeth that's going to cut into the shaft. And once you get one full circulation in there, then you can start to turn it. But what I normally do is I'll turn 90 or 180 degrees and then back off half of that. So if I cut 90 degrees, I back off 45. If I cut 180, I back off 90. Now the reason you do that is because the metal you're cutting starts to build up in between the cutters inside there. So if you just continually want to go like that, it just builds up in there and it gets really hard to turn. And sometimes you can't even make the thread right. Okay, at least this is the reason I created this channel is I only want to share things that work, not things that I tell you I think will work. And this is how it works for me, okay? And then this is what it looks like once you've got it started, and I back it off. Every time I do 3 or 4 rotations, I'll back all the way off and re-oil and use cutting oil and lather it up. And then I'll go back in. Once you feel it grab, I'll work it until I go in maybe 2 or 3 turns, then I'll back it off. And then I end up with a lot more thread. Now, normally I will mark this, but since I'd already made a test stud, I just kept laying it on this to make sure I got my thread length right. You can also, when it's in the lathe, do just a little scribe line when you're turning it, how far in you want it, and you'll be able to see it that way too. But in the end, this is what the finished stud look like. And at the end of this, there'll be a video showing me actually doing one. So something, I want to plant a seed about when you're building something. The AirBike I'm building 100% from plans. And I think these plans are from the 90s. And there's a lot of things today that you can do that makes it easier. There's some things you may do. I mean, it actually says in the AirBike book that comes with it, they know a lot of people are going to modify it. But I couldn't call it like the DAG AirBike. The moment I modify it, it's really more of my design than an AirBike. If your last name is Smith, you couldn't call it the Smith AirBike. It's either an AirBike or it's your creation, okay? A lot of these little things I'm doing, I've learned from my own experience. So I would say if you're going to build an AirBike, follow the instructions 100% if you don't have the skills to understand where you might be making something a little bit easier to do or stronger to do. Or, I've had a couple of people reach out to me and say, well, I'm going to do this with the AirBike. And I'm like, I have no idea if that would work. I'm not recommending, don't come to me and say, hey, Dag, I'm going to do this with my AirBike. What do you think? Unless I've tested the material or I've worked with the material or I know how that material is going to behave, I'm not going to tell you to say, yeah, I think that's a great idea, go do it. The difference between a model airplane and an ultralight is if the ultralight's wing fall off, you're going to die unless you have a BRS on it, ballistic recovery system. So folks, I've had some people really modifying what they're doing on air bikes and then ask me what they think of it. And I'm not going to give you an opinion. Actually, I'm going to tell you, unless you have the skills or an engineer that's helping you understand how to do this, follow the plans. The plans have worked with hundreds of air bikes that are flying in the world. Okay? I don't know how to stress that enough that I'm trying to be polite here, and I'm not talking about anybody specific here because I don't want to hurt any feelings. But if I see a bad weld, I'm going to tell you that weld looks like crap, and you need to go get a welder who's going to sign off your welds, okay? Because the whole fuselage is TIG welded up or MIG welded. And I've already shared how I don't like the idea of MIG welding unless you really know what you're doing. Because with a MIG welder, people are melting through that really thin 4130 chromoly, and then they're turning the temperature down, and then they're getting cold welds. So I'm trying to be as constructive as I can, but just because you bought the plans to the AirBike and you think you can swap out different types of wood like I have, I've backed stuff up with carbon fiber toe that I've used for years. So don't build the AirBike like I'm building my AirBike unless you know exactly. I can't share everything I'm doing. You can't see every place I've put carbon fiber. You don't know what sometimes the type of carbon fiber toe I bought. You don't know the strength of it. You don't know the resins I'm using, which I try to share this stuff, but I'm not sharing it for you to modify how the AirBike drawings and designs are done. So please, if you don't have the experience or the testing or the skill, build it 100% to the plans and it'll work. Okay. I always want to end my videos talking about getting kids involved in model aviation. And something really interesting happened. So I've gotten kind of two types of people coming after me about this. 95% of them love the idea I'm trying to get kids in aviation. The other 5% are saying it's a waste of complete time. If you believe it's a waste of complete time, quit watching the video or fast forward to the end so you can see how I cut the threads. But if you think we should get kids into model aviation, it's a gateway drug to engineering, to all kinds of sciences, to all kinds of things. We need pilots in the world. Go to Purdue for 4 years, go into the Air Force, fly fighters for 10 years, then go and become an astronaut. There's so many different paths that model aviation can take you. And I did a video 2 days ago about the AMA Beta and the AMA Alpha here, which are free flight models. And I had a dad reach out to me that he had bought the Alpha kind of for himself and started playing with it. And his 12-year-old son, who is heavily into video games, started playing with the airplane and asked his dad to get him one. So his dad got him one, and the kid painted it a different color, yellow. And the kid's having an awful lot of fun with this. And the dad's like, I can't believe my son, who I thought, he's never been interested in his RC airplanes. He's never been interested in his RC boats. He's a 12-year-old kid, and he got one of these rubber-powered airplanes, and the kid really started playing with it, both in the house and outside. And it may just take that one thing to get a kid to put down the video game. And the way that dad explained it to him is he thinks his son was intimidated by the RC, that was just going to be too hard. And because most of us that have already learned to fly don't need a simulator, so why would we buy a simulator? So, to have a son or daughter, and this is the same thing with my kids. My kids never got into model aviation. And when I look back on it, they were probably intimidated, like, oh gosh, Dad can fly these huge airplanes. I could never do that. Well, he's bought a simulator now for his son, and his son's actually flying the simulator pretty good. So he's sitting here thinking, holy cow, the kid loved the rubber-powered airplane. Kid's got a simulator now, and showed no interest. So radio control airplanes may be too intimidating for some of our kids. We just don't realize, if we've done it all of our life, then we have a kid coming up through the ages, they may look at that and go, oh, I could never do what Dad does or Mom does. And getting the rubber-powered airplane was simple enough, and the kid got kind of hooked in it, and now he's learning to fly a simulator. So look, folks, there's gateway drugs to, I always look at video games and everything that just basically is, and look, if you're an adult and you want to sit down in your basement and you want to be part of SEAL Team 6 and go around and blow people up, and that's your hobby, far out, rock on. But if you've got a 8, 10, 11, 12-year-old that's sitting on the cell phone all day or sitting on a video game all day, there's all kinds of studies out there that says that's not the healthiest thing for their mental capacity to become a functioning part of society in the future. Now, if we have another pandemic and you want your 30-year-old living at home in your basement for you, keep them on the video games, keep them on the cell phones, okay? So, look, that's it, everybody. I could talk for hours about getting kids into aviation, and I just need to shut up. So, rock on, everybody. Please like and subscribe. I'm trying to build my YouTube. I'm trying to get the word out there of all the cool things that I think they're cool to me. A lot of people tell me they're cool. So, stay safe, take care, and be nice to each other. See you next time. Rock on.
It's time now for that scrumptious bonus video on how Dag threads the stud.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are going to take basically a AN type bolt that I have cut off the head, and I need to make it threaded on both ends so I can make this adjust for the pin on the hinge of my aileron, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Right now I'm just going to show you how I tap this. And when I first started to use a die to create threads, I was doing it all wrong. I still don't know if I'm doing it right, but at least it works. But basically, you got to let the cutting tool do a lot of the work. So one of the most important things is how you're originally getting it started on there straight. And you're just going to let it grab. And when you feel it grab, back it up about 5 or 10 degrees. And now keep in mind, I've already prepared this bolt by putting it on my lathe and putting a little bit of a taper on it and making sure the end's square. But you can get frustrated because it just doesn't want to start sometimes. But once you feel it start to grab, you don't want to just keep on cranking. You want to back it up about 10 or 15 degrees to kind of clear that cutting edge or tool or whatever you call it in the die. And she's grabbing great now. So what I'm going to do is turn it about 90 degrees, back it up about 10 degrees, turn it about 90 degrees, back it up about, I don't know, 45 degrees, turn it 90, back it up, turn it. If you just keep turning it, it will actually bind up and clog up the little teeth that are cutting the metal. By backing it up, it's actually cleaning itself out. And what I do is I get on about 4 or 5 turns, and then I back the whole tool off and re-oil the whole thing. But you got to back it up. So let me go ahead and back it off now. Let's see if you can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so you can see the threads are starting. Put a little bit more cutting oil on it. And be very careful when you thread it back on. You're not cross-threading it or you're going to start cutting up all the threads you just made. Okay, turn it on until it gets, you feel it start to cut right there. I'm going to go about maybe 180 degrees and then back 90 because it's really getting started now. And if you want to, you can mark where the threads are, how far you want to go on. Normally, I back this off a couple of times to oil it, and I'll compare it with the first one I did, because this is actually the second one. And all you do is you lay your other one on there, and you decide how far back you want it. And I want to go on about another 1/4 inch. Oil it. Be careful getting it started. And you really have to tighten this in your vise. I mean, you're gonna strain your guts out. This has got to be really tight in the vise. Okay, there it grabs. And if you feel it getting really hard, just back it off and clean out those teeth. And then run it back on there. Okay. I'm going to compare again to see how close I'm getting. And I'm getting really close. Oil it each time. Turn it until you feel it grab. Right there. I'm sure there's videos on YouTube to do this. I'm sure there was instructions when I bought this, but I'm not real good at reading instructions for some reason. But over the years, this is how I learned to do it, and it works fine. And you got to be careful. You'll keep getting your knuckles on your vise. So, but I need this as close as I can get because I don't want to have it slipping and moving around on me. And that may be close enough. Yeah, it is. It might have gone on another turn, but it's good enough. Now what I'm going to do is take and run on just a regular nut to make sure everything's working right. Gonna cheat and run this on until it stops. Okay, it stopped right there. Back it off. And that's how you go from no threads to threads. It's really just that simple. And the reason I'm doing this is the way the aileron hinge is originally made. I'm kind of modifying a little bit because there's just a pin on it that I don't like, because if the hinge, aluminum piece that holds the hinge together were to pop off, your aileron could fall off. Now, I don't think any air bikes have ever had an aileron fall off, but I'm actually going to have this stick out so I could put a nut on it and it could never come off. But on this side, I need to be able to put a nut on it because you can't get a bolt in from the other side. So I'm going to push this in and then run a nut back on it because there's not enough, it's too tight of quarters inside the aileron. And you'll see this as I complete the aileron. But that's it, everybody. That's how I put threads on to make kind of a custom stud. Take care. Rock on.